The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city streets as Officer Mark Reynolds cruised through the neighborhood. It was one of those areas he had been told to keep an eye on. High crime, they said. Frequent trouble, they insisted. And so, with years of ingrained suspicion, he patrolled with a firm grip on the wheel and an even firmer grip on his preconceptions. That was when he saw the car, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, gliding smoothly down the street. The driver was a black man, dressed in a crisp suit, his posture upright, his eyes focused ahead. But to Mark, it didn't matter how he looked. He had seen too many similar cars linked to trouble. So he flicked on his lights and pulled the vehicle over. The man inside the sedan let out a slow sigh as he saw the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He pulled over calmly, turned off the engine, and placed his hands on the wheel. He had done this routine before, too many times to count. He knew exactly what to do to avoid escalation. Mark approached the car with his usual air of authority. One hand rested on his holster as he tapped the window. The driver rolled it down slowly and turned to face the officer with an expression of quiet patience. License and registration. Mark's tone was clipped, cold, and laced with underlying irritation. He didn't offer an explanation for the stop. He didn't feel he needed to. The driver nodded, moving slowly to retrieve the documents. As he did, Mark's eyes scanned the interior of the car, searching for anything that might justify his instincts. A weapon, drugs, something. But the car was immaculate, just like the man driving it. "You mind telling me why you stopped me, officer?" The man's voice was calm, controlled. There was no anger in it, just a quiet expectation. Mark narrowed his eyes. "Routine check. You were driving suspiciously." The driver held his gaze. "Suspiciously? How so?" Mark didn't like the challenge. "You match the description of someone we're looking for." It was a vague, familiar excuse, one he had used before. It rarely met resistance. The man studied him for a moment before offering a small, knowing nod. "I see." Mark snatched the license and registration, stepping back toward his patrol car. As he ran the information through the system, something shifted in his expression. His eyebrows furrowed, his jaw tightened, and a cold bead of sweat formed at his temple. The name on the license read, Jonathan Carter. Rank, Chief of Internal Affairs. Mark swallowed hard. He stared at the screen as if willing it to change. Internal Affairs, the department that oversaw police conduct, investigated misconduct, and had the power to end careers with a single report. And not just any member. This man was the head of the entire division. A sickening realization washed over Mark. He had just racially profiled his superior. With a dry throat, he walked back to the sedan. His demeanor had changed. The authority in his stance had melted into something more careful, more uncertain. Mr. Carter." "Chief Carter," the man corrected, his tone even. Mark's stomach twisted. "Chief Carter, my apologies. I didn't realize..." "Didn't realize I was who? Someone important?" Carter's voice remained steady. "And if I weren't, would this have gone differently?" Mark opened his mouth, then closed it again. His mind scrambled for an excuse, but none of them would hold up. He knew it. Carter knew it. "I'm just doing my job," Mark attempted weakly. Carter nodded slowly. "That's what concerns me." Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Carter could have raged, could have humiliated him, could have had him written up on the spot, but he didn't. Instead, he did something much worse. He let the truth hang between them, forcing Mark to sit in it. After what felt like an eternity, Carter finally spoke. "Officer Reynolds, I'd like you to consider something. How many times have you done this? How many other men have you pulled over with no cause, other than the fact that they looked like me?" Mark's mouth went dry. His hands twitched at his sides. He didn't have an answer, not one he could say aloud. Carter inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. "I have the power to end your career today. Right here, right now." Mark's pulse thundered in his ears. He knew it was true. "But I won't." Mark blinked, confusion flickering across his face. Carter continued, "Because firing you won't change the real problem. You are a symptom of a system that taught you to see me as a threat before you saw me as a man. That's bigger than you." Mark's shame felt suffocating. "But that doesn't mean you aren't responsible." Carter's eyes locked onto his, unrelenting. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to your precinct, and you're going to think long and hard about what you've done today. And tomorrow, you're going to start making different choices." Mark swallowed the lump in his throat. He wanted to protest, to defend himself, to say he wasn't racist, that this was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, he knew he had nothing to stand on. Carter took his documents back, rolled up his window, and pulled away without another word. Mark stood there, his hands trembling at his sides, as the realization of everything that had just happened sank in. For the first time in his career, he saw himself clearly, and he didn't like what he saw. As the taillights disappeared into the distance, Mark Reynolds knew that this would not be just another stop. It would be the moment that changed everything.